you all don't speak the Tuscarora Yuante, the Tuscarora language? Well, let me explain and translate. Juan means hello in the Tuscarora language. So now I'm going to say it again, and all of you can answer me with the same thing. Juan. Oh, that was really weird. Let's try it again. Now, I know that you all are thinking it's raining. Come on, we're going to have fun today. So I want you to say like you're excited, just like I said it. Juan. Oh, very good. Ike Kosmakega, it's good to see you. Now, as she said, my name is Ueski Steakwa Wohale. Don't worry, you don't have to say all that. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? In English, my name is Ramona Moore Big Eagle. That is my honest-to-goodness real legal name. But all my friends, and I invite you to be my friends, just simply call me Ramona. How's that? Much easier, isn't it? Okay. As she said, I'm a legend keeper from the Tuscarora tribe. As a legend keeper outside of the reservation, I am a storyteller. And I want to start with the first story. It's flat because it's raining. It's too much moisture. First off, the drum is very important, and in fact, we consider it very special. It's sanctified, set aside, and it's round like the earth, and it represents the earth. The beat of the drum, what is that? Heartbeat, exactly right. So it's the heartbeat of the earth and the heartbeat of the nation, of the people. So that's why the drum is so special. We believe as long as the drum is heard, that the people will live. So that's very special to us. I'm from the deer clan of the Tuscarora tribe, so my drum is handmade just for me. There's no other drum in the world like this one, and it's made out of deer hide. And the handle is a deer antler. And with the drum, the songs that we sing are songs from our heart, which is why they're called heart songs. Now, the song that I just shared was a calling song. It was to call you to attention, to call you from the cares of this world, to call you from your thoughts about class, about what you had for dinner that wasn't good, that was good, the fact that you're probably looking forward to supper, and you know what you're wondering probably is it going to be a surprise meat or what? You know what I mean? It's to call you to attention to be in this place at this time right now. And our songs are vocables. You know, at this time of year, people sing, deck the halls with boughs of holly, right? And what are the next words after those? Okay, let me start over. Let me tell you this. I do a participatory presentation. I don't, you know, for the next hour, I'm not going to stand and just talk. I'm going to talk to you, and guess what? You all are going to talk back. So when I ask questions, I want all of you to answer me and get into the program. Now, I know at your age, at some point in your life, you've sung Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly, right? And what did you say after you said those words? Exactly. Okay, now you're getting with it. And what does fa la 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 mean? What? You don't know? Wait a minute. Well, I bet these two grown-ups over here know. What does fa la 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 mean? No idea? Okay, well, the reason why, no one knows really what it means is because there is no meaning to it, no translation. It's a mood, a feeling, an expression of how you're feeling. Carefree, happy, jubilant. The same way with, I think you all call them beats, where you go, or whatever you do. You know what I mean, right? my children always say, Mom, please don't embarrass our whole entire ancestry by doing that. But you understand what I mean, right? You know, there's no translation for it. It just simply expresses a feeling, a mood, an emotion. So that's what our songs are. They're vocables. They express feelings, emotions. There's no translation for them, for the heart songs. Now, a lot of our songs are done in a language, depending upon the tribe that's at the drum. In most cases, the songs are done in the Lakota language, the southwestern tribe. Sometimes here in the northeastern Woodland area, they're done in the Tutelo language. The Tutelo are a tribe of American Indians that used to live, I was going to say right here in North Carolina, but I'm in South Carolina, right? Well, a tribe that used to live in North and some parts of South Carolina too. That tribe is now extinct. The people do not exist anymore, but their language still exists to this day because their language was a trade language. When you had two different tribes that would get together, they spoke their own language, but they had to have a language in which they spoke to each other to trade. So that language in most cases would be the Tutelo. So a lot of our songs are in the Tutelo language. A lot of different things that we do are in the Tutelo language just because it was a language that was widely spoken by different tribes. Okay? Can you hear me all right back there? You're welcome to come forward closer. Okay, now that I've put you on the spot, right? Oh, and by the way, I teach on the graduate level too. I'm a professor, a college professor. So I love working with college students. And thank you very much for accommodating me by moving forward. I appreciate that. Now, I will answer your questions at the end, but if you'll listen carefully, you'll find that I'll answer most of your questions as I go through and I share with you. Okay? So, as a legend keeper, a storyteller, I preserve our culture, I present our culture, and I promote our culture through storytelling, through the presentation of artifacts, through drumming, singing, dancing. I do all this to keep our culture alive, and of course through storytelling. It is through our stories that you learn so much about who we are as a people, and it's not just about who we were. Most people tend to think of American Indians as people of the past, so it's not just about who we were, but it's who we were and who we are today. We are a vibrant, alive, living culture today that are among you everywhere you go. And we might not be dressed in buckskin and feathers, but nevertheless, it's not about our outward appearance, it's about our inward DNA makeup, and our lineage, our heritage. So I want to share some of the things I brought with me as I go through. Now the first thing I want to share, not that I think I need it with this group, you all are so attentive, but this is our talking stick. In our culture, as any culture, you have to have a way of deciding who talks and who listens. In our culture, we use the talking stick or the talking feather. So I brought the talking stick with me. Everything that I have with me, from my moccasins on up to my beaded earrings, everything is handmade. Either I made it by hand myself or family and friends made it for me. This stick was made for me by a friend of mine from the from the Cherokee Nation, George. And this is actually George's likeness on this talking stick. Now that's only when George is serious, I guess when he's asleep. Because normally whenever I see George, he's laughing, smiling, and telling some joke that I couldn't tell here. Okay, so this talking stick was made by hand for me by George. And the only person that can talk whenever we have a gathering is the one that has the talking stick. So since I have the talking stick, that means I'll do some of the talking, not all of it, and you'll do most of the listening, okay? But I will give you opportunity throughout the presentation to ask questions, to talk also. Also, we do a call and response. From time to time, just in case I see you starting to doze off or your mind wanders, I will call out to you, ho. Now, your response to me is, hey. Now, let's see if you're listening. Ho. Hey. Very good. Now, contrary to what every middle school student thinks I mean when I say that, Ho means, are you listening to me? Do you hear me? And when you say hey, you're saying yes, I'm listening to you. Yes, I hear you. Ho? Very good. And that's our quick, short way of bringing people to attention. You know, when we have ceremony, when we have storytelling in our longhouse, it starts at 4 o'clock during the day, and it goes all the way to the next morning at 6 o'clock. So you can imagine around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, there's a lot of ho and hey to make sure everyone stays awake. So that's just one of the things that we've used from the years. In our longhouse, and let me mention this, Native people in this part of the country, North, South Carolina, what we call the Eastern Woodland area, never lived in teepees. Okay? None of my people, none of your people ever lived in teepees. We all lived in long houses, hence our name for ourselves. Our name for ourselves is Haudenosaunee. Haudenosaunee means the people of the longhouse. Now every tribe has a name for themselves, a name that they call themselves. It's not necessarily the names that you hear them called, but you know, they have names for themselves, and each name means the people of, and then some descriptive element about the people. For instance, Tuscarora, that's our name for ourselves. The Tuscarora people means the people of the hemp shirt. We made most of our clothing in North Carolina out of hemp, and hemp is still used to this day to make clothing. It's a fiber that you can use to make any kind of clothing you want. A lot of people I see wearing bracelets and necklaces, but we actually made shirts and pants and clothing out of hemp. So, because it was so plentiful in this area. So we're the people of the hemp shirt. The Tuscaroras, the Tuscarora people, are the sixth nation of the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee people. We were originally right in North Carolina, in Robeson County area, eastern part of North Carolina. And during that time, life was good. We lived in long houses, and the deer, our main staple, were plentiful and everywhere. So we didn't have to, like the southwestern tribes, pack up our home and everything to move when our food moved. Deer were plentiful, so when we put a house up, we stayed right there in that area. And as such, our long houses were more sturdy. They were made out of wood, you know, out of trees and tree bark and that type thing. So it was a permanent structure we would stay in. Within our culture, people are related by their clan, not their names. So, for instance, if you say Smith, you know which family you're a part of, the Smith family. But in our culture, it's by the clan. As I said, I'm from the Deer clan. So I'm related to other Deer clan people of the Haudenosaunee nations. Okay? So, enough of that. Let's have a story. Now, anyone ready to hear a story? Ho? Okay. I was a little bit weak. Let's see, only these people really wanted to hear a story, so. Okay, now, I want to ask, are you all ready to participate with me in the story? I want to see a nod of heads, or are you all ready to participate? Okay. I'm asking first. Okay. Good. You don't know what you're getting yourself into, but you'll find out. Now, the stories that I tell are stories that I heard when I was growing up. And they're stories that have been passed down for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. A lot of times, especially on college campuses, people think, well, the stories are meant to entertain children. That couldn't be farther from the truth. The stories are told to children, but they're also told to adults, because they're the stories that adults, all adults, grew up with. And they're meant to teach lessons and to inspire one to be all that they can be. Not that we want you to be in the army, but I'm just saying. Okay? So this story is a story I heard growing up, and I want to share it with you, but I want to make sure that you all are going to participate. You are going to participate, right? Okay, great. Now this story takes place a long time ago in all of the winged ones. Who are the winged ones? Okay, and that's part of the bird family, right? So the winged ones, the birds, all of the four-footed ones. Who are they? Animals. Four-footed ones, animals. Now this one's going to be hard. You're going to have to really think about this one. The two-footed ones. Who are they? Humans. Us. Exactly. And the no-footed ones. Who are they? Fish, worms, snakes. Now there was a time when all of us spoke the same language and lived in peace and harmony together. Now you all knew that, right? How many of you knew there was a time that people and animals all spoke the same language? Okay. I know that every single one of you in here knew that, but you've forgotten it. Let me explain how I know. In every culture, there are creation stories. Stories about who the people are, how they came to be who they are, and where they are. And those stories always go back to first man, first woman, or first thing. And depending upon the language, first man, first woman, or first thing have different names, but nonetheless it's first man, first woman, first thing. Now you've probably heard stories or read stories about Adam and Eve, right? What did Adam and Eve talk to? What did Eve specifically talk to? What did she talk to? Right, a snake. Now, when you read the story or heard the story, did you hear that Eve said, Adam, come and look, it's a talking snake? Did she say that? No, she didn't, did she? You know why she didn't? Because she was used to talking to animals. She was used to hearing animals talk. And when you heard those stories yourself as a child, I dare say most of you didn't look at your parents and say, Mom, that animal talked. Did you? You accepted that because it was written in on your DNA that that's how it was thousands of years ago. So back during that time, that now some of you are starting to say, oh yeah, I do remember that from a kid. Now, I have to tell you this. I talk to all ages from preschool through 105, okay? Whenever I ask preschoolers that, they all raise their hand. They all knew there was a time when animals and people talked. When I ask first graders that, they raise their hand. First, second, third grade. Around the fourth grade is when you start to forget. You start to stop believing. I'm here to take you back to the time when you believed, okay? So it's during that time when the animals and the people all spoke together that Bear was the chief of the four-footed ones. Now let me just ask a question. Here in South Carolina, do you all know what a bear looks like? They're a little small, brown, furry guy, right? No. They're bigger than that, right? Bigger, bigger, bigger. Okay, so that's what a bear is. A big, huge, big claws animal. In fact, they have a bear claw. Remind me and I'll show it to you before the program's over. Okay, so the bear is a big, hairy guy, big claws. Now, Bear was the chief of the four-footed ones. And Bear's best friend was the small, brown, furry guy, Chipmunk. Now, Bear and Chipmunk were the best of friends. Now, they looked different then than they do today. Back then, Bear had a long, swishy tail. Now, what did I just say Bear had? Okay, no, that's not what I said. I didn't say Bear had a long, swishy tail. I said Bear had a long, swishy tail. So now, what did Bear have? Yeah, I'm going to keep doing it until everyone participates. Bear had a long, swishy tail. So what did Bear have? Now, I have to just tell you, you're no different from my college students that I'm going to be teaching tomorrow night and taught last night. You're thinking, I can't believe this woman is having us sit here and act like we got a long, swishy tail. Yes, I am. And it just gets better from here, okay? You haven't seen anything yet. Okay, so you're right. Bear had a long, swishy tail. Now, as you know, in case you've been close to any bears, bears don't look like that today. Today, bears have short, stubby tails. And also, Chipmunk looks different than he did before. Back in those days, Chipmunk had a smooth, brown, furry back. Now we know today, Chipmunk has what? No. No, Chipmunk. Oh, that's too funny. No, Chipmunk has stripes, right? You all are silly guys. You all don't even know what a chipmunk looks like. You've never seen a chipmunk? None of you grew up with Alvin and the Chipmunks? Okay, well, didn't you notice they had stripes on their back? They did. That just goes to show you can't believe everything you see on TV. Okay, so in real life, chipmunks have stripes on their back, okay? Right down the center of their back. But back then, they didn't have stripes. They had just a smooth, brown, furry back. Okay, and of course, we have stories as to how that came to be. But they were the best of friends, and they would play all the games. And now you're looking to play your escape, aren't you? Okay, go right ahead. See, I was going to give you opportunity to do just that. Okay, so they were the best of friends, and they played all the games that you used to play when you were growing up. Okay, and they had a good time. But there was always one thing that Bear did that kind of irritated everyone, and that was bragging. Bear would brag, and when Bear would brag, this is going to be your part, so listen up, okay? This is what Bear would say. Bear would say, "I'm the strongest." You're going to say that part. He'd also say, "I'm the smartest." And then he would say, "I can do everything." Okay, now that's your part. Let's practice so you can, get it good by the time you actually have to say it for the story. So what did Bear say? Wait. Bear did not say, "I'm the strongest." No, Bear would put his hands up and he would say it in a bear voice. So what did Bear say? "I'm the strongest." Wait. Now, what happened over here? This is what we call audience participation. I expect everyone to participate, right? Okay. So now what did Bear say? "I'm the strongest. I'm the smartest. I can do everything." Okay. That was all right for a first try. Don't worry, I'm going to give you a few more chances to do the same thing again. So be ready. So now Bear would say that, but it was not true. But you know something? No one was going to argue with Bear. I mean, come on. He was the chief. You don't argue with the chief. And besides that, he was a bear. Would any of you argue with a bear? No way. They were smart enough to know you don't argue with a bear. So they would just let Bear say whatever he wanted, even though they knew it wasn't true. So now, as I said, Bear and Chipmunk played all the games that you played when you were growing up. What's one of the games that you played when you were growing up? Hopscotch. Okay. Hide and seek. Thank you. They play, I don't know about these other games you all talk about. They played hide and go seek, okay? And that was one of their favorite games, especially Chipmunk, because Chipmunk was so small. He could hide underneath a leaf and no one would see him. But on one particular day when they were playing hide and go seek, Bear snooped up on Chipmunk, pulled the leaf back, and said, "Gotcha!" And Bear won that game. And when Bear won that game, he started bragging. What did he say? "I'm the strongest. I'm the smartest. I can do everything." Okay, see, I forgot my motions because I was looking at you not participating with me. So, when Bear did that, Chipmunk was a little bit upset, but he thought, okay, that's all right. We'll play another game, and we'll be even, because I know I can win at this next game. What do you think the next game was that they played? Anyone ever played tag? Did anyone play tag? Okay, that's what they love playing, tag. So next they played tag. And Chipmunk was so small and fast, he usually won. But on that particular time, again, he lost. And when he lost, Bear got a little bit louder and exaggerated his motions a little bit more. And what did he say? Say it with me. "I'm the strongest. I'm the smartest. I can do everything." Well, Okay. So he's won 2 games. Who cares? We're going to play my 3rd and final game that I always win at. Now that game, I'm just going to let you know, you played it too. Duck, duck, goose. Now Chipmunk was good at duck, duck, goose. And he always won because Bear didn't really care whether he won at that goose. You want to know what? At that game? Because whether he won or not, guess what? Bear got that duck and goose no matter what. So it didn't matter whether he won or not. So they played duck, duck, goose. Now, by the way, when you all played duck, duck, goose, you did play with a real duck and goose, right? You didn't? Wait, you played duck, duck, goose and didn't have a real duck and goose? Well, why did you call it duck, duck, goose? I mean, it's only called duck, duck, goose. Well, anyway, you all modern city children, I got it. But back then, they played with a real duck and goose, okay? And so they played duck, duck, goose, and Chipmunk was just about to win when all of a sudden, Bear won. And because Bear won for a 3rd game in a row, he did some outrageous bragging. I'm sure you can show me what outrageous bragging looks like. What did he say? I'm the strongest! I'm the smartest! I can do everything! Okay? You missed out on that part, right? You were supposed to do it. Okay, that's all right. I'll give you another chance all by yourself, don't worry. Okay, so Bear said that, and Chipmunk was so upset. Chipmunk looked at Bear and said, I don't think so. The Bear couldn't believe it. Chipmunk had never spoken like that to him before. And then before Bear could say anything else, Chipmunk said, if you're so strong, if you're so smart, if you can do everything, can you keep the sun from rising tomorrow? Can you keep the sun from shining? Now you know, if Bear had been as smart as he thought he was, Bear would have looked at the sun and said, no, only the Creator can do that. But instead, Bear said, I can keep the sun from shining. Chipmunk said, we'll see. So now, all night long, Bear sat up facing the eastern sky. That's where it rises here in South Carolina too, right? Okay, I'm just teasing you. I'm from South Carolina, so yeah, it rises here in South Carolina on the east side too. So it rose on the east, so that's where he was facing all night long. And all night long, you could hear Bear saying, the sun will not shine tomorrow. The sun will not rise. Don't worry, I'll spare you. You're going to have to say all that. But that's what he said all night long. Now, Chipmunk went into his little hole and had a good night's sleep because he knew it was going to happen. Early that morning, Bear saw a tiny speck of light in the eastern sky. And that little speck of light got bigger and bigger and bigger until at last the sun rose in all of its beauty and glory. And just about that time, Chipmunk came out of his hole. And Chipmunk did exactly what you do first thing in the morning when you get up. What do? You yawn and scratch and stretch, right? So let me see some yawning, scratching, and stretching. So he yawned and he stretched. Exactly. Rubbed his eyes. Don't forget to rub your eyes. And he looked at the sun. And when he looked at the sun, he smiled. He looked at Bear and he laughed. He looked back at the sun and he looked back at Bear and he really just started laughing his head off at Bear, teasing Bear, calling Bear names. And then he did something that made Bear furious. You know what he did? Same thing you used to do when you were little. He went, nah, 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 you couldn't do it. And when he said that, Bear was so furious, Bear took his big old bear paw and came right down on top of that chipmunk and would not let that chipmunk go. Now that little chipmunk changed his tune then. Underneath that bear's paw, that little chipmunk said, roo, roo, roo. Now in chipmunk language, that means, help, let me out of here. But that bear would not let him go. And then that chipmunk remembered something his elders, you know, those that are older and wiser than you. He remembered something his elders had always taught him. They had taught him if ever he was in a tight spot and needed help, all he needed to do was call on the Creator who would hear him and help him. So that's just what he did. And so the Creator gave him a plan of escape. So underneath that bear's paw, that little chipmunk said, Mr. Bear, it's tight under here. It's hard for me to breathe. Could you lift your paw just a little bit so I could breathe? And like I said, that bear was not that smart. Bear said, I can do that. Bear lifted his paw just a little bit. But that was just enough for that chipmunk to do what? Take off running as fast as he could. And chipmunk was just about to jump into his little hole when all of a sudden, that bear's paw came right down across his back. Now, Chipmunk got away, but boy, did he have a backache. His back hurt so badly, he had to sit inside his hole for several days for his back to heal. When he finally came out, all the other chipmunks crowded around him, and they said, "What happened to you? What happened to you?" He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your back, look over your shoulder, look at your back." What had once been a smooth, brown, furry back now had stripes right down the middle of his back, right where that bear's paw came down across his back. And to this day, when you ever see a chipmunk, they all have stripes down the middle of their back. And as a result, Chipmunk learned some important life lessons that day. Life lessons that went with him all of his life. Maybe you heard some life lessons in this story. If you did, share one with us. None of you got a life lesson from that? Okay, I'm going to get that one in a minute. Exactly. That story teaches everyone, not just children, the importance of calling on the Creator. Not just when you're in a tight spot, but anytime. You're exactly right. Good life lesson. What was your life lesson back there? Exactly. You know, if you're going to brag just to yourself by yourself. Don't be bragging all over. And then if you're around someone that's bragging, don't be trying to, come back at where they are. Then you go down to their level. Let them say or do whatever they want. You ignore them. See, it was stories like this that taught young people how to conduct their life, how to live. A story also teaches that you reap what you sow. Okay? What you put out there comes back to you. Which is why we say, don't make fun of others, because it might just come back to hurt you. Because what goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. So you treat others, of course, the way you want them to treat you. So see, it might seem like just a simple child story, but these are stories that were shared with children to teach them how to live as adults. Stories that molded their thinking, shaped their lives, prepared them for their destiny. So, how Chipmunk got his stripes. That's what that story was. And of course, there's another story that goes on with other things. But let me share some of the things that I brought with you. Now, I have everything divided by a timeline, and the drum is the timeline. Because no matter the age or the time, the drum has always been very important to Native people. Before contact, and that's where that drum is really, at contact. Where that flag is, this flag is the flag that we proudly wave at our reservations, at our powwows. A powwow is a gathering to celebrate our culture. We have powwows right here in South Carolina, up in North Carolina. Every state pretty much has powwows. I've been to powwows in Alaska, in Canada, in California, North, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, all along the eastern Woodland area and all over this country. And you'll see flags like this proudly waved at our powwows. As you can see, it's the flag of the United States, but it has an American Indian in the center of it. And the powwow celebrates our culture through drumming, singing, dance, and everyone wears regalia. We never call our clothing costumes, because people wear costumes at Halloween when they're pretending to be something they're not. So we call our clothing regalia, because our clothing tells the story of who we are as a people. A proud nation. So our regalia, which is all handmade, there's no pattern for it. There's no pattern for our regalia. You know how to make the regalia based on the stories that were handed down to you from your elders. There's a reason why Eastern Woodland has short fringe, why Southwestern have long fringe. It's in our stories. There's a story behind everything. Not just within the native culture, but everything in life. All of life is a story. And all of us are the storytellers. Every single day is a new page, a new chapter in your life story. Okay? So when you look at our story from the very beginning of time, before contact, Native people wore deer hide, buffalo hide. All of our clothing came from the land. We lived off of the land. Whenever an animal was killed, everything was used. So in this case, I made this dress right here. It's a deer hide dress. We call it a buckskin dress. It's made out of deer skin. It took 6 deer hides for me to make this. And I will tell you this, there's a difference between deers from North Carolina and deers from South Carolina. These are South Carolina deer. They're bigger. Okay? If I had used North Carolina deer, it'd probably take maybe 8 deer hides to make this dress. But because I used South Carolina deer, it was only 6 deer hides to make this. Now, at that time when I made this, I was a little bit afraid to fringe it because I wanted nice, thin fringe like this. So a friend of mine, a guy, did the fringing for me. And then when I made this one, as you can see, it's not as thin. I'm not as good at cutting it like he was. But I made this in one day, fringed. In fact, I was on my way to Durham, North Carolina to a powwow. So I let a friend of mine drive. I sat in the back seat and fringed this while I was sitting in the back seat so I'd have it ready when I got to the powwow. So it took me forever even to decide to cut this out, but once I got started, you can't mess up, because if you mess up with deer hide, you've got to start all over with another hide. There's no, so this is deer hide. And this is actually a deer hide right here. This is a deer hide with the hair on. When we make deer hide clothing with the hair off of it, you actually have to take a knife, or in this case, just to be honest with you, when you cut the grass, a lawnmower blade. That's how usually when I tan hides, I scrape the hair off with a lawnmower blade. Anything sharp, okay? You might use a hoe handle, not the handle, but the actual metal part, the hoe, to scrape the hair off. You only do it in the wintertime, because it's hard work, it's tiresome, it's hot, so you do it in the wintertime. If you did it in the summertime, number one, your deer hide would not be as well preserved. It would take a lot more work, so you do it in the wintertime. Okay? Any questions about the animal hide clothing that we always used to wear? And we used to wear this before contact, always. Everything from the animal would be used. Nothing would be wasted. After contact, and do you know what I mean when I say after contact? Anyone know what I mean when I say after contact? Okay, after 1492. In 1492, American Indians discovered Christopher Columbus lost at sea. So during that time period, from that point on, that was contact. So we always, even though we wore and desired to wear our animal hide clothing, our life changed forever after contact. We were forced onto reservations. It was never our choice. And our clothing was taken away from us, our animal hide clothing. Our languages were taken away from us. So as a result, the clothing that we made was out of the material that the government gave us. We called that material trade cloth. These regalia right here are made out of material, trade cloth, because we had to trade in our animal hide clothing and wear clothing out of material that the government gave us. Okay? Our shoes. This is an example of our moccasins. As I said, everything's handmade, so these moccasins are handmade and beaded by one of my children. I think it was my middle child. I had 3 children. They're all grown up, and I have 6 grandchildren. These are some moccasins that belong to my oldest granddaughter. The Tuscaroras have a reservation in Maxton, North Carolina. We also have a reservation in Lewiston, New York, because we're the Six Nation of the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And we have a reservation in Canada. So a friend of mine in Canada made these moccasins for my granddaughter. So when she outgrew them, then she gave them back to me, and I put them on my display table for people to see an example of Native American handmade moccasins, and these are from Canada, okay? And they're real comfortable. They're nice and warm and comfortable, handmade moccasins. My son is, he's an IT specialist now, but when he was younger, he used to help the traders at the powwows clean out their different things. And one day, one of the traders, as I said, I live in Charlotte. This is back when the Charlotte Hornets were, their heyday. She gave him this cap. She had beaded it, and she gave him an eagle feather attached to the cap. Now, within our culture, the highest honor you can give a person is an eagle feather. And she gave him the eagle feather with this cap because every time the powwow was over, he would help her pack up all her things and put them into the the truck. So that was a big help to her to have someone helping her since she was by herself. And so to honor him, she gave him this cap and an eagle feather. This outfit right here is the first regalia that my daughter ever made. She made this when she was 10 years old. Now, as I said, there's no pattern to our clothes. You only know how to make them based on the stories. A group of elders, a group of women got together, and we all made regalia. And we were simply told to bring about 7 yards of material and a pack of pins and needles. When we got to her house, she sat in the middle of the floor and started tearing the material in strips and telling stories. We did the same thing she did. We started tearing our material in strips. And then as she talked, she started talking about the longhouse, which all Iroquois, Haudenosaunee people live in. This is the shape of the longhouse. So we pinned the strips of material in the shape of the longhouse. Then she started talking about the fire that's within the longhouse, which is the heart of the longhouse, which goes right up the center of the longhouse. So we did this part. And then she talked about dancing around the fire. That's what this is called. So everything on this regalia is based on a story. No pattern, but a story. So when we made regalia after this one, we couldn't even get started to make it until we sat down and told the exact same stories that elder had told us. This is the first fan that Stephanie ever carried. It's kind of in bad shape right now. As I said, we're from the deer clan. This is a deer foot. Now, I know that you might think, ew, yuck, okay? Well, let me just explain this. As I said, we would use everything. The woman that made this fan was a woman of many trails. She lived in Goochland, Virginia, and everything that she had came from her land. She lived off of the land. And this is an actual fan that she made for my daughter. It was a great honor when she gave her that. On our legs, women would wear turtle shell rattles so that when we danced, not only did it look beautiful, but it also would sound beautiful. For example, turtle shell rattles. As I said, we would use everything. Nothing would be wasted. Okay? In our hair, the women would wear adornment, just like you all have barrettes and caps and headbands and things like this. Well, this is the same type thing. These are minks. Men and women would wear minks wrapped around their braids or tied onto their braids. And I decorated these with abalone shell, bone, and glass beads. The colors of the Tuscarora Nation are red and black, so I decorated with abalone shell and bone and glass beads. Okay? And these are moccasins that my children wore when they were younger. And these are the moccasins that my 3 granddaughters came home from in the hospital when they were born. Now, our music, you're listening to a good example of our music right now. That's Carlos Nakan. Okay? And our music consists of rattles, drums, and the flute. Let me share one last story with you, and I'll share these last things and take your questions, okay? In regards to our stories, there was once a wise old woman who loved to go into the forest. And when she would go into the forest, many times she would take her moccasins off just so she could feel the mossy green grass underneath her feet. She loved to see how the sunlight filtered down through the canopy of trees. The smell of the woods would always be a nice cool breeze on her cheek, filled with the scents of the forest. She would see the butterflies bobbing and bouncing and dancing and darting and glittering and fluttering throughout the forest. It was just beautiful. She loved it. She always heard the sound, the not too far off sound of the babbling brook as the water rushed over the stones, smoothing them out, age after age after age, smoothing out the rough spots, just smoothing those out, rounding them out. She loved this, and she'd always take a knapsack into the forest with her, with a bite to eat, and she always had extra, just in case she met an animal that was hungry, or perhaps a person. She always had extra. One day she was sitting by that the babbling brook. She would put her hand into that water, cup it to her mouth, and she would drink that crystal clear, cool, refreshing water. She could feel it as it went all the way down, refreshing her, nourishing her. But this particular day, she saw something sparkling in the water. She put her hand into the water and came out with a large, valuable stone. She held that stone up to the sunlight, and the sparkle of that stone told her it was worth much, much more than just any other stone she had ever seen. It was very valuable. She put that stone back into her knapsack and continued to enjoy herself. Now, not too long after that, a young man walked into the forest, a stranger. And she could tell by one look at this young man that he was not in the forest there to enjoy nature. His clothes were all tattered and torn and dirty looking. His body was so thin a frame that she could tell he had missed quite a few meals. And his brow was all wrinkled with worry, fear, frustration. She greeted the young man and said, "Would you like to sit down with me and have a bite to eat?" He wasn't in a position to pass up a free meal, so he readily agreed. They sat down together. When she opened up her knapsack, she could tell that he had seen that stone because his eyes grew wide with amazement. She pulled the stone out, held it in front of the young man, and said, "Would you like to have this stone?" Now the young man thought, this has got to be a joke. No stranger offers you a stone that valuable. But he looked at her face. There was no mockery, no deceit. So he said, "Yes, I'd love to have that stone." Without any hesitation whatsoever, she gave the stone to the young man. The young man thanked her, he hugged her, and he went away knowing that every problem he had in life would be taken care of because of this valuable stone. But the next day, he was right back in that forest looking for her. When he found her, he said, "I've looked all over the forest for you. You know, yesterday you made me a rich man with this stone, but I've come to give the stone back to you." She looked at him with a questioning mark. Why? He said, "Even though you made me a very rich man yesterday, I want something that's even more valuable than this stone." And he gave the stone back to her. And she said, "Well, what? What do you want?" He said, "I want what you have inside of you that caused you to give the stone away." And with that wise old woman took that stone back into her knapsack. And she began to tell that young man story after story after story after story, imparting her wisdom, her knowledge, her experiences, her life. And finally, when that young man had heard all of her stories, he grew as he was listening. And when he finally left, he left that forest richer from hearing her stories than when he had the stone. May you grow richer also from hearing the stories of your elders, your friends, and your own stories.